Jack Ablin is Executive Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Harris Private Bank, manages about $60 billion in assets. Jack, welcome to Street Smart. I wanted to ask about your tech perspective. You have some interesting insight on tech stocks right now, and it doesn't jibe with what we've been hearing from a lot of the fund managers who've been coming on lately. You don't think that it's going to lead the market? You don't think it's a good idea to rotate into quality big tech names as we've been hearing from pretty much everybody else? Why?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at tech as a sector relative to the other sectors, it's kind of milquetoast right now. It's right in the middle of its range. It's not offered any relative strength or momentum. I mean, it's certainly not cheap, and it's not moving in the right direction. So, I mean, I understand the argument, I suppose. You want high quality, you want growth, you want an export orientation. I think investors are better served looking at healthcare. This sector is table-poundingly cheap. In fact, it started the month as cheap as finance was in the beginning of 2009, and starting to move. I think with the market flat over the last 30 days, healthcare is up 6-7%.
Hang on, before we get to healthcare, and Suzanne has been looking at healthcare here, so I do want to talk about it. What do you see as far as the problems at Hewlett-Packard are concerned? I mean, even if you're not investing in it, everybody's got to love the story here. Is it just a company-specific problem there, or is it across the board, a problem with consumers no longer interested in PCs? Everybody would rather use a tablet computer. They need to branch out into other businesses. What do you think?
Well, I think, again, as sort of an observer of the whole sector, I would say there's probably more of a temporary interest and temporary hiatus of consumers looking at tablets. I know businesses, certainly we are, looking at trying to integrate tablets into our everyday business. So I think there's generally just a focus and an attention paid on tablets right now, and as a result, desktops and laptops are taking a back seat. I think ultimately we're going to need desktops and laptops, and we'll probably come back that way over the next several quarters.
So you think the demand will come back? You think this is a sort of a faddish, or at least a temporary obsession with the tablet, and we're needing more computing power and bigger computers?
Well, I think the tablets have a potential to displace some capacity that consumers have been using desktops and laptops for, certainly. But I think, at least for the most part, if you're dealing in finance, you're dealing in kind of the heavier intensity areas, you're still going to need the computing power of a desktop or a laptop.
All right, now I want to move on to, because Suzanne has been taking a look. You mentioned healthcare. You think it's table-poundingly cheap. Suzanne's been following healthcare for us. Suzanne, what do you think?
Yeah, my question would be, Jack, we look at these healthcare stocks. They're up 14% this year. Pharma stocks are up 11%. And some of the individual names continue to make 52-week highs. And we're seeing really every area of healthcare, whether it's managed care like Humana or Pfizer in the pharma space, all see pretty big gains. So I look at these gains, 40%, 20%, 45% for Biogen. You got to wonder, do you want to take some profits now? I know you think they're cheap, but you look at those gains, they're a defensive group. Why do you like them so much?
Sure. I think you have to put the sector in context. You remember, the whole sector's been left for dead for years and years, especially with President Obama's inauguration and the health care bill essentially, again, pretty much cast aside these beleaguered names. And so, the question is, are these new valuations the new reality, or, are they just down and out and forgotten and starting to rebound? So while, notwithstanding these gains that we've seen over the last several months, I do think that there's a lot more room to go. If put it this way, if healthcare gets back to its normal valuation relative to its historical relationship with the S&P, it's going to outperform the S&P by 30%.
What about the healthcare legislation here? I mean, is there a concern that a lot of that gets repealed? Does it change your view at all?
Well, I think healthcare legislation is certainly adding clouds over the sector, and probably part of the reason why we're seeing, a lot of these names trading at a discount. I think that the biggest risk isn't so much the Obama bill or even its repeal. It's really, how are we going to tackle these issues going forward? If we look at Representative Ryan's proposal, where it's really more of a defined contribution program to Medicare, then yeah, I think healthcare companies are going to feel the pinch. If, on the other hand, we continue to offer third-party payment, demand goes up when other people are paying the bill. So I think that near term we could see an expansion of healthcare demand, but ultimately we will have to reconcile these imbalances. And personally, I support Ryan's proposal, but that probably longer term isn't great for the healthcare stocks.
Jack, hang on a second. I want to get Adam's take on dividend stocks. They may offer a place to hide. Speaking of defense here.
Well, Jack, I can't figure out healthcare. I know you're a smart guy, but for those of us who just like the money, I got to note that the dividend group, DVY, is one of the funds, up 9.5%, S&P up 6.5%. Names like AT&T, Verizon, not Alcoa, Altria, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think? Do you just hide in some dividends and try to make some money?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's part of the theme. I certainly like telecom. Staples also. It's really a large cap growth story. It is defense. It's arguably later stage in the cycle. It's export orientation. It's secure dividend with low debt. So it is somewhat of a place to hide. And I think the high dividend consumer stocks probably not a bad play, not quite as cheap as the healthcare. But certainly not a bad place to clip some coupon while we wait for a lot of these bigger issues to settle themselves out.
Jack Ablin from Harris Private Bank, thanks so much for joining us.